let's dive into a story that is absolutely wild. In the dead of night, a giant yellow weasel appeared, begging me for help. I'm Luke Schwan, a former chief surgeon, but at that moment, pure terror took over, and I just wanted to hide. I stared into its round, glowing eyes, my own voice shaking with fear. Look, I am a human surgeon, not a vet. You have the wrong person. But that weasel, named Huang Da, kept pleading. He was desperate, pleading with me. The villagers told him I was an incredible doctor who could save them. Please, save my family. I will work for you tirelessly, like a loyal servant, forever. Seeing him on the verge of tears dragged my own painful trauma back to the surface. 2 weeks ago, a 25-year-old patient died on my table. His family begged me, just like this. Since that day, my hands shake uncontrollably whenever I look at a scalpel. I looked away toward the window and told him firmly that I was no longer a doctor. Get out. I pushed Huang Dao outside and slammed the door, but the forest remained completely silent. I sat on my bed, my mind flooded with memories of that lost patient and his family screaming. That sleepless night was pure torture. If I did nothing, that mother and her babies would surely die. Now, pay attention here, because at that exact moment my conscience won and I threw the door open again. Huang Da was still waiting. When he saw me step out, his round eyes lit up like 2 bright headlights. Quick, bring your wife inside. My small cabin in the woods was a simple, rustic northern cottage. It smelled of disinfectant and old wood. I quickly laid a sterile cloth on the table, creating a makeshift operating room. When Huang Da rushed in carrying his wife, I saw her belly was swollen to a terrifying size. She had no strength left to cry out, only trembling violently from the agonizing pain. Outside, shadows danced against the window, feeding my anxiety. I was terrified, but my surgeon instincts forced me to focus. I pulled out my dusty surgical kit and began disinfecting the thick fur on her swollen belly. I called my old colleague from obstetrics. He answered half asleep, and I quickly explained the bizarre emergency to him. With his guidance, I got some confidence back. Listen closely. I had to perform surgery on her right there. Life and death belonged to fate. I took a deep breath, leaving it to heaven, and picked up the scalpel. You can imagine the panic, right? My hands shook uncontrollably under the dim light, bringing back my worst nightmare. I made the incision. To my absolute shock, an icy black mist began to seep from the wound. There was no time to question it. I just focused completely on stopping the heavy bleeding. Forcing my hands to stay steady, I worked quickly and cleanly. Minutes later, tiny baby slid into the tray. Huang Da's wife let out a soft sigh of relief, making a tiny, weak sound. 3 tiny, warm lives welcomed the dawn as they entered the world. Mother and babies were completely safe. Huang Da wept with pure joy and quickly began licking and cleaning his newborn family. I pulled off my bloody gloves and stared at my hands, which had finally stopped shaking. The crushing weight I had carried in my heart for weeks was gone. I stepped onto the balcony to watch the sunrise. I immediately called my colleague to tell him they survived. I think I can finally perform surgery again. He asked if I planned to stay in this forgotten place forever. I looked at the dry blood under my fingernails. I remained silent. He said, Lu Ashwan, as doctors, saving lives is our ultimate duty. But sometimes fate is out of our hands, he said. Since that tragic accident, I lived in constant fear. In this field, we see life and death every single day. You cannot avoid it. Everyone has their own path. I know. Are you coming back? He asked again. I watched the golden sunrise on the horizon and kept quiet. Anyway, just asking. Honestly, I also feel like throwing in the towel and quitting this brutal job. I work like a dog every single day, and today is pure chaos. So many pregnant patients, I can barely keep up. I hung up, looked at the sun rising high in the sky, and headed back inside. Huang Da and his family were resting peacefully in the temporary nest I built for them. I set up a nest with clean straw and disinfectant. Trust me, after a wild night like that, they earned it. 2 days later, right at sunrise, my grandmother was shouting outside, pointing at a dead pheasant. It was lying dead with a broken neck by the door. She called me out, completely fascinated by it. Let's dive into a story that will completely hook you. It all starts when I wonder where this pheasant came from, seeing a tiny head peeking out from behind the grinding stone. Huang Da stared up at me expectantly with round eyes. He even wagged his tail instinctively. Grandmother smiled and said, "Someone must have delivered this gift to the wrong house." Leaving a gift unannounced is strange, but if nobody claims it, we will cook it. After all, this bird is quite plump. Every single morning, upon opening the door, I found a pheasant outside, and sometimes even a fat field mouse. After eating pheasant for 3 straight days, even my burps began to smell like chicken feathers. I could not take it anymore. I stopped Huang Da on purpose and begged him to stop bringing birds, since I was sick of eating them. Huang Da tilted his head thoughtfully, seemingly understanding my words. The next day, the raw meat smell was gone, replaced by a pile of bright red wild berries, covered in dew and neatly arranged. "Xuan, is that the great immortal Huang? I saw him days ago. They are probably paying us rent with all of these things." I must admit, these little creatures are highly spiritual. How could they not be? Not only do they understand paying rent, but watch closely, because they actually speak our language, and Huang Da became incredibly smart. Leaving early and returning late, he brought various gifts like wild mushrooms, berries, and even strange unnamed medicinal herbs. Under my care, the wound on Huang Da's wife healed quickly, and she was soon able to guide her young ones everywhere. Finally, one afternoon, Wang Da brought his entire family to say goodbye, as they had to return to the thick forest behind the mountain. Having sent off these very special patients, my life finally returned to normal. But that peace did not last long. On a night with a pale moon and few stars, that familiar knock on the door echoed again. Thinking Huang Da had returned with more presents, I went to open the door with some reluctance. "I already told you I do not charge rent," I managed to say before freezing completely. Standing outside was not Huang Da, but a wall of red fur, a massive creature over 2 meters tall, its coat shining brightly under the moonlight. 2 emerald green eyes glowed like lanterns in the dark, making me shake from pure terror. Its massive shadow swallowed me completely. That heavy, overwhelming presence almost made me collapse right then and there. I dared not move a single muscle as my mind screamed for help before this monster capable of eating me in one bite. However, the beast spoke first, asking if I was the miracle doctor who saved the Huang family. I trembled, not daring to reply. It was speaking my language. Then the monster lowered its head. I followed its gaze down and discovered that beneath its huge claw, it held a tiny, trembling creature trapped. Looking closely, I saw Huang Da, who had just left. Trust me, seeing his face gave me back some comfort. "What do you want from me?" I asked, but the beast did not answer. Instead, it bared terrifying fangs. This is the moment our breath catches, thinking that everything is completely over. "It is going to eat me!" But before I could scream, my feet felt light and I was lifted off the ground. It threw me onto its back like a little chick, scooping up the terrified Huang Da at the same time. I was still dazed in its thick red fur when the creature commanded me to hold on tight. Right after, the red-furred beast ran swift as the wind, carrying me into the mountain forest as freezing air bit my face. With my limbs completely numb, all I could do was cling tightly to its red coat. Lying on its back, I shakily asked Huang Da what was happening, but he was also terrified. He replied with a trembling voice that Chi-Chu had broken into his home, forcing him to lead him to me for an emergency. Chi-Chu, that was the giant fox's name. As we dashed forward, we passed by a neglected shrine in ruins. Unvisited for years, its walls had crumbled down. Under the silver moon, I spotted a headless statue on the altar. The clay head had fallen off at some point and now lay tilted to one side on the ground. Its hollow eyes stared directly toward the path we were taking, a sight that gave me a horrible shudder. I hugged Chi-Chu's back, feeling every bound of his rapid dash as the freezing wind whipped through my clothes. I felt like my bones would break from that extreme speed. After running for a long time, he finally slowed down. The air around us no longer smelled of rotting leaves or dry branches. Instead, there was a fresh fragrance, like precious wood mixed with the clean scent of mountain vegetation. Shining eyes and whispers echoed in the dark, and you and I are left wondering what happens next. All right, you and I are diving into pure madness. Why would Chi-Q bring a pale, tasty human here? Has he completely lost his mind? How dare he bring a human into these sacred lands? My heart completely stopped. Did he just throw me straight into a fox demon nest? I am totally doomed. Lu Shen, you did not come here to save a life today. You are the freaking appetizer. Ki-Q completely ignored the whispers and dragged me deeper in until we stopped right before a colossal cabin.
He crouched down so I could get off and spoke to the cave in a deep voice. I found someone to save my big brother.
Several foxes of different colours slowly emerged. The leader was even larger than Chi-Q, radiating a powerful, majestic and intimidating presence. But what almost made my eyes pop out was seeing 3 long, fluffy tails swaying behind her. The pressure was so intense that my legs started shaking. She was King Yi, Chi-Chu's mother and herd leader. Surrounded by giant beasts, my phobia of massive things hit hard. Those emerald green eyes. Qing Yi stared right through me, completely still like an ancient statue.
Now pay close attention. Cold sweat drenched me as the giant foxes started arguing fiercely.
Big Brother is in critical condition. How could a human cure him? Why do we not just eat him while he is fresh?
Let us eat him. The one speaking was a fierce-looking brown fox. Chi-Chu called him second brother.
But what if he can actually heal him? Did not the Huang family kids say this human has real talent? This was a grey fox, much calmer. Both sides argued heatedly, and nobody seemed to care if I lived or died. What do you beasts even know about me? You are the ones who know nothing, you bunch of ignoramuses. No, seriously, you have absolutely no idea, I screamed desperately inside. Are you going to steam me or make soup? Just stop debating my death already. Just as my brain was about to short-circuit, the silent Qing Yi finally spoke. Her voice was elegant and deep, carrying absolute authority. Human, look at me. I looked up instinctively, meeting those powerful emerald eyes. That Huangda kid said you cut open his wife's belly to save their pups. Is that true? I nodded frantically, my throat too dry to speak. She asked if I used human medicine. I kept nodding like a broken machine. Qing Yi fell into a long, heavy silence. I know what you are thinking. The tension was unreal as that massive head leaned down, suffocating us. The second brother saw Qing Yi hesitating and growled impatiently, practically drooling all over my shoes. Dude, where are your manners? You are a sacred fox. Show some class. 9, take him inside.
Qing Yi finally gave the order. Chi-Chu sighed in relief, but the second brother complained.
Mother, do you really trust this human? What if he pulls something during surgery? Qing Yi gave him a freezing glare. Second brother, if your brain worked as fast as your mouth, you would have a human form by now. He shut up instantly. Offended, he went to a corner to bite his tail. I followed Chi-Q inside. Huangda followed us closely, whispering that Lady Qing Yi and her children were very reasonable. His logic was basically, if I cure him, I live. If not, I am the appetizer. Stepping into the massive cave, I was completely amazed. It was not dark at all. The stone walls were covered in glowing moss, lighting up the place like daylight. There was a strange scent in the air, wild beast mixed with a very expensive sandalwood fragrance. Deep in the widest stone chamber, we finally met his older brother, Bai Chen. He was a massive white fox lying weakly on a rock. His fur, once silky white, was stained with dark blood. The most horrific part was his front leg. It was bent at a grotesque, completely unnatural angle. The wound was deep and open, but the strangest part of all was the black smoke rising from it, malignant energy. Seeing this, my professional instinct overrode my fear. I frowned deeply. Chi Qiao rushed over to him and gently nudged his nose. Bai Chen weakly opened his golden eyes, letting out a faint gasp without making any sound. I stepped forward to examine the wound, but the second brother blocked my way. What are you doing? Trust me, things are about to get intense. I ignored the second brother and told Chi-Q I must examine it. All right, stick with me here, as Chi-Chu roared. If I do not step in now, he dies. The second brother reluctantly backed away, glaring at me like I was some fake doctor who would kill him at any moment. I put on the last pair of sterile gloves from my kit and carefully parted the matted fur around Bai Chen's wound. Right then, a freezing dark energy rushed up my fingers, straight to my brain. It was so cold I shivered. Deep inside the gash lay a pitch-black, palm-sized scale. It was wedged tight and sharp as a knife. The surrounding muscle was completely black and dead, with dark smoke slowly spreading from the wound. What exactly wounded him? I asked, my voice trembling. Not from fear, but from the shock of seeing something so bizarre. Chi-Chu's eyes filled with rage. It was Hei Yan, that ruthless eagle. He used this demonic scale to ambush my brother. Now pay attention, because this was no ordinary wound. The dark energy from the scale caused an active infection, preventing natural healing and acting like a corrosive acid that was slowly consuming his very life force. The situation was worse than I thought. I took a deep breath. Honestly, the toxin and dark energy had already spread.
Another half hour and he will lose his leg and his life will be in danger. The cave turned dead silent.
Dozens of fox eyes stared intensely at me all at once. Shang Yi silently appeared behind me, casting a massive shadow. How confident are you? My mind was racing. Clean the wound, cut away the dead tissue, and purge the dark energy. By medical logic, if we remove the source of infection and combine it with spiritual purification, there is a chance. But my patient was not human. And to make matters worse, that damn shaking in my hands returned. I clenched my fists, forcing my voice to sound steady. I must operate, extract the scale, and scrape away all dead flesh. The risk is incredibly high. I have no anesthesia for someone his size, so he will have to endure it. Also, I need clean boiling water, herbs to stop the bleeding, and the sharpest blade. I will give you whatever you need. But if you fail, Ting Yi shot me a cold look that seemed to pierce my very soul. He did not finish, but I knew the foxes outside were already lining up to eat me. I smiled bitterly. If I fail, I am not leaving this place alive anyway. I looked at Bai Chen on the rock. He was watching me. Look closely at those golden eyes with me. There was zero fear of death in them. That look. The 25-year-old who died on my operating table looked at me the exact same way. A desperate plea. And I failed him. Stop shaking, Louis Yechuan. I gritted my teeth, telling myself, you are here to save a life, not to die. I looked up with absolute cold determination. Prepare everything. We are operating immediately. The pack's efficiency was incredible. Chi-Chu quickly led several foxes to heat a massive stone pot of boiling water. Several small, agile foxes carried a pile of sharp stone shards in their mouths. They were incredibly sharp, crafted from a very rare and mystical mineral. Those edges gleamed with a cold light, just like my scalpel. I dropped the stones and tweezers into the water to sterilize them. With all my professional focus, I looked at Chi-Chu, lead them and hold him down tight. Do not let him move under any circumstances. A single slip of this blade and there is no turning back. Chi-Chu nodded firmly, pinning Bai Chen's hips with his full weight, while other foxes held down his limbs. It is going to hurt badly. Try to endure. Bai Chen slowly closed his eyes, as if he understood me. But as I picked up the hot stone and touched his skin, my useless hands began to shake again. Haunting voices from my past hit me like a wave. You fake doctor, give me back my son. You do not deserve that weight coat. My vision started to blur completely. The fox's blood seemed to morph into the red pool on that operating table. Miracle doctor, wake up! Huang Dao's anxious voice suddenly rang in my ears. He had found a strange herb glowing with a faint blue light and held it right under my nose. An icy scent filled my lungs like a bucket of cold water, instantly clearing away the chaotic nightmares. I snapped back to reality, meeting Bai Chen's calm golden eyes as he waited for me. He said nothing, placing all his trust in me. My grandmother used to say, people like you were born for this profession. If your mind is steady, your hands will be too. Why did I doubt? Come along with me to see if he survives. Let's dive in as our heroine closes her eyes to bury her fear, and when she opens them, everything is crystal clear. Her hands finally stopped trembling, making a clean, swift and steady cut. Bai Chen roared in pain, holding back as his body convulsed violently. Chi Chu and the others held him down with all their strength, digging their claws deep into the ground. Dark blood mixed with black smoke suddenly gushed out. I did not hesitate for a single second.
I was completely drenched in sweat, droplets sliding down my nose from the intense focus.
Huang Da quickly wiped my sweat with a cloth. Suddenly, my stone flake struck something hard. I found it, I cried, using 2 long stones as makeshift tweezers. I carefully slipped them into the open wound, tightly gripping the edge of that dark, solid scale. Look closely at this madness. That scale is literally writhing in his flesh as I yell to hold him tight. I pulled upward with all my might until I ripped out that palm-sized scale. The moment it left his body, thick black smoke erupted violently, slowly fading away under the soft glow of the luminous moss.
I did not dare stop.
I quickly washed the wound with boiled herbal water, scraping away decayed flesh with a sharp stone until bright red blood began flowing again. Only at that moment did I feel the air finally rushing back into my lungs. "Water, quick, bring water," I shouted. Bai Chen was breathing very weakly from the pain and massive blood loss. The most critical step had arrived. The stitches, that gash was simply too massive. Ointment alone would not heal this, but I had no needle or thread for foxhide. Panic broke out in cold sweat. At that exact second, one of Qing Yi's tails began glowing with a brilliant, blinding silver light. Suddenly, a single strand of ultra-fine silver hair broke free and drifted in the air. It transformed into a glowing suture needle threaded with silver. "Use this," Qing Yi whispered weakly. "It is my life hair." It can heal anything and preserve life. I was stunned. How much cultivation energy did it cost to make this? This 3-tailed fox risked her entire life and power, putting all her absolute trust in me.
I did not hesitate and grasped the silver needle. It felt as warm and smooth as jade.
This was bound to be the most miraculous surgery of my entire career. The needle smoothly pierced Bai Chen's flesh. The silver thread closed the wound like a healing melody. I continued stitching, slowly and with extreme care. Every single stitch was flawlessly tight. Knotting the final thread, I collapsed onto the ground, gasping for breath. My soul felt like it was drifting, but you and I know we did it. The surgery succeeded. I looked at Bai Chen sleeping peacefully on the stone. Though his breathing was light, he had stabilized, his pale nose gaining color. He survived. Silence filled the cave as hundreds of watching foxes stared at the scene in absolute disbelief. Next second, Chi-Chi-Yu approached, lowering his majestic head to gently nuzzle my cheek. His fur was incredibly soft, smelling of fresh rain. It felt wonderfully warm. Then came the second brother. Yes, the exact one who wanted to eat me earlier. He walked over sheepishly, bowing in apology for his behavior. After that, every single fox in the cave bowed their heads to me in perfect unison. It was a silent thanks, but it carried incredible weight. Sitting on the cold floor, I stared at my bloody hands and the glowing needle. Suddenly, I began laughing uncontrollably before breaking down into heavy tears. Tears kept flowing. I saved him. "Lu Xuan, you are still a doctor. You can still save people. No, save lives." I ended up staying in the fox's cave for 3 days. Those 3 days were cozier than my time as chief doctor in the city. If thirsty, I drank monkey wine, wherever they got it. It was sweet with a solid kick. For food, there was roasted meat and strange wild fruits, incredibly juicy and crisp. My bed was a thick layer of dry grass, blanketed by some unknown animal hide, which was unbelievably soft. Lying down there felt like floating, pure, absolute comfort. I figured this wasn't suffering, but staying in the beast world's equivalent of a luxury presidential suite. Bai Chen's recovery rate was astonishing. By the morning of the 3rd day, the leg with the deep wound was already twitching. His snow-white fur had completely regained its brilliant, radiant shine. That is where we leave things today, watching a beast once near death heal with only a thin silver scar. Join me as we watch him approach, his golden eyes no longer showing any sign of pain. Only warm gratitude remained. Thank you, human miracle doctor. Bai Chen said, his voice clear and soothing like a mountain spring. I kept my eyes down, busy organizing my medical bag, and answered without looking up at him. No need for formalities. It is just my duty. As I said those words, even I froze. After quitting my hospital job and coming home, I thought I would never say those words about a doctor duty ever again. Yet they flowed so naturally. Besides, they actually respected me here, without looking at me like I was some midday snack. We are a branch of the Qingqiu mountain fox clan, known as the Chiksu. We have protected these deep woods for hundreds of years, and that black eagle, Heian, is our sworn enemy who always tries to seize our lands. I listened in shock, feeling like I had not just crossed borders, but had somehow landed right in the middle of some bizarre ancient Chinese myth. Before I left, Qingyi stopped me, handing over a long, glowing red leaf with shimmering light dancing across it, like an eternal flame. This is the crimson flame herb. It does not just cure 100 poisons, it also wards off evil spirits. I was about to reject it, but Qingyi locked her emerald eyes onto mine and deeply insisted that I take it. Pay close attention here, because your pure spiritual aura in these wild mountains might attract dark entities we never want to see. Keep it for your safety. My heart skipped a beat. Pure spiritual aura? How did I not know I had this metaphysical constitution? Before I could ask the details, Qingyi vanished into the cave, leaving behind a fresh scent of agarwood. Then Chi-Chu offered to walk me back home. The massive red fox, towering over 2 meters tall, walked beside me with an incredibly imposing and powerful presence. Every wild beast in the forest hurried to get out of our way. Once we reached the old acacia tree, Chi-Chu stopped. "If you need me, stand by this tree and call my name 3 times. I will hear you," he said. I just nodded. Looking at his giant fluffy head, I could not resist petting him. His fur felt unbelievably soft to the touch. Chi-Chu wagged his tail happily, paused for a moment, and added that his eldest brother is Bai Chen and his second is Chi-Er. "And you can call my mother Qingyi." My lips twitched slightly at his words. Their naming sense is way too casual. Chi-Chu did not get the joke, simply licking his lips and revealing his white teeth in a massive, bright grin. By the time I finally reached my small forest cabin, dawn was breaking and my grandmother was heading out to the shed. The second she looked up, she froze in her tracks. "What a spectacular welcome," she exclaimed. My grandmother narrowed her eyes without showing even a hint of surprise. I, on the other hand, almost fell backward in pure shock. Believe me when I say my clean yard had been turned into a mountain farmer market. By the wall sat 3 plump pheasants and a wild boar leg that easily weighed several dozen pounds. There were also 2 neat bundles of rare medicinal herbs, and right by the mill, a basket overflowing with juicy wild berries. Their sweet scent filled the air. A mountain bird even sat fluttering on my window, next to a string of shiny, colourful gems. "Your friends are incredibly generous." My grandmother pointed toward the wall, laughing. When I looked over, my heart nearly stopped at the sight of Chi-Chu's giant red head. He blinked those huge emerald eyes, staring at my grandmother like a giant stuffed animal that had done a terrible job of hiding. I rushed over quickly, trying to push his massive head back down to hide him from view. Meanwhile, I awkwardly tried to explain to my grandmother that he was just a distant relative visiting from the mountains. I told her all these goods were his rent payment. Feeling my push, Chi-Chu whined softly and pulled his neck back. My grandmother set down her sickle, walked to the pile of food, grabbed an apple, wiped it off, and took a huge bite. "Not bad. Your friend is very thoughtful, and this fruit is delicious." I watched Chi-Chu walk away, looking back with every step. I finally managed to relax a bit. My grandmother stepped closer and gently brushed a long red fox hair off my shoulder. "Now that you are back, rest easy. The mountain folks might have their own rules, but they are easier to handle than city people." In that moment, my past trauma faded away. "Sue, you have cleared up your doubts these past few days, right?" I looked into my grandmother's wise eyes and nodded with complete certainty. "Yes, I understand everything clearly now. I do not need a big city operating room to save lives. In the end, you and I both know that as long as I can hold a scalpel and heal those in need, I will always be a real doctor in this tiny cabin." Let's see how she got her life back on track. Every day I dried herbs in the yard with my grandmother, and sometimes went to town for supplies, though my garden got livelier every day. Today, a basket appeared at my doorstep, piled with red berries glistening with fresh dew.
Tomorrow there will surely be 2 premium wild ginsengs on my window. No need to ask, they were gifts from my furry mountain friends.
That boy Huang Da sometimes brought his wife to visit me. The 3 little fur balls were already rolling around everywhere, clinging to my legs and completely melting my heart. My former obstetrics colleague called me again, furious, asking if I was coming back, because the new intern stitched with terribly shaking hands.
I am going crazy. I listened to her complain over the phone as I stepped outside, watching my tiny garden visitors and the misty mountains in the distance.
I smiled and told her I was not going back. She asked if I really planned to cultivate immortality in the countryside. I told her I had new patients, but she scoffed, saying my rural clinic did not even have an electrocardiograph. I smiled mysteriously and said they were not what she thought. Hanging up, I breathed in deeply, enjoying that incredibly fresh air. Now pay attention here, because right at that moment, something softly scratched at my yard gate. A tiny, soaking wet otter was holding its injured little paw, looking up at me with absolute pity. It asked for help, whimpering that a crab pinched it. Its tiny voice carried a dark and cold energy. Looking closer, I noticed a faint trail of black smoke swirling around its wound. Come inside. Let me clean your wound and wipe out that dark energy. Just like that, my little countryside clinic opened its doors again.
Life kept moving to this magical rhythm, and my patient list grew bigger and bigger every day.
A clumsy badger with a broken leg passed out after hitting Chi-Chu, and a wild boar hallucinating from poisonous mushrooms showed up next. Chased by its mother straight to my entrance, nearly knocking down my courtyard wall in the process. There was also a depressed nightingale singing sad heartbreak ballads outside my window every single morning, belting so loud it gave me a headache, though most of the time it just listened to my hospital rants. Surprisingly, it recovered in a few days and even wanted to set me up with another beautiful nightingale. It kept insisting she was gorgeous, but I told the bird I was perfectly fine. The little bird kept pushing, but my fame as a doctor had already become an absolute legend throughout the mountain. And look, I am not just talking about Chi-Chu or Huang Da. My reputation reached the next mountain. One night, a tremor so violent shook me awake that I thought it was an earthquake and ran outside terrified. Good grief! A massive black bear as big as a truck had its claws on my wall, peeking in curiously. Next to him, a frantic monkey was scratching his head, and when he saw me, he started screeching and pointing at the bear's snout. Shaking off the heavy pressure, I stepped closer. When he opened his massive mouth, the terrible stench almost made me pass out. Good heavens, this is no ordinary bear, it is the Great Heian. His teeth were completely rotted, and he even had human candy wrappers wedged between his fangs. I asked him how many sweets he had stolen from children, and the poor bear whimpered, shrinking his giant body. I solemnly told him we had to pull out several teeth. Heian instantly trembled, sheer panic written all over his face. Sighing, I had no choice but to call Chi-Chu over to the old tree. A red flash appeared instantly. He asked if I needed him, and once I explained, Chi-Chu burst into a mocking laugh. He said the greedy beast deserved it, but still eagerly leapt away to fetch me all the tools. He brought back massive, highly polished stone players. Looking at them, I realized they were bigger than my own thigh. I paused for a second and chose the simplest, most brutal method. I asked Chi-Chu and some strong foxes to hold the bear down. I tied one end of a tough vine to the rotten tooth and hitched the other end straight to Chi-Chu's big tail. I ordered them to run forward as soon as I signaled. On the count of 3, run with all your might. A terrifying shriek echoed as a massive, bloody tooth went flying, leaving the poor bear rolling around in pain. The powerful yank nearly knocked Chi-Chu over. I picked up the tooth, letting out a heavy sigh of relief. And that's where we leave it, with the forest echoing all night with bear whimpers and fox laughter. All right, you and I are about to see how the great Heian got flattened after I blasted him with my spiritual energy. He lost all will to live. No more stealing sweets, I warned him. Heian nodded weakly with tears in his eyes, and from that day on, he became my loyal bodyguard.
Every single day, super on time, he brought me a jar of the freshest, most delicious mountain honey.
He also kept an eye on those mischievous little monkeys to make sure they did not trash my small vegetable garden.
My life was more relaxed than a retiree's, right up until an unexpected visitor showed up.
That day I was treating a rabbit with a hurt leg when suddenly my courtyard gate was kicked wide open.
A middle-aged man in a black Taoist robe stood at the entrance, coolly adjusting his glasses on his nose.
His icy stare pierced right through me like a snake stalking its prey. "You must be Lu Chuan," he said, making me frown.
"Who are you?" I asked. He did not answer, just scanning me up and down while a creepy smile spread across his face.
Watch closely because he noticed spiritual energy right out of my body.
"My informant caught the scent of Ba Yan's medicine on the mountain. Seems you're the one who saved him," he added. He had not even stepped into my yard, but a heavy, dark aura of death surrounded me. "Who I am does not matter," he spat.
What matters is your skill as a doctor. It just so happens I have a crucial mission that absolutely requires your valuable help.
"You must come with me." "What if I refuse?" I replied, knowing I had every right to say no. My hands were already sweating cold. The stranger let out a chilling laugh without even twitching a single muscle.
Yet the black paper talisman in his hand floated up without any wind. That decision is not yours to make.
As this guy spoke, my precious dried herbs turned pitch black at insane speed, crumbling into ash. It gave me absolute goosebumps.
That kind of power was way beyond anything I knew. "What the hell did you just do?" I demanded firmly.
"Just cleaning up trash," he said with eyes full of pure greed. Suddenly, two men in black suits appeared right behind him.
They were clearly dangerous thugs. I backed away on pure instinct. My heart was beating so fast it was about to burst, but just as they lunged, a golden flash leaped out. You and I knew he would not leave me alone.
He sunk his teeth furiously into one of their wrists. It was little Huang Ga.
Barring his fangs, his fur stood completely on end. "You annoying pest," the thug snarled, blasting a wave of dark energy that sent Huang Da flying. He coughed up blood, and pure rage clouded my vision. "Looks like your little friends cannot save you," he sneered. He marched straight toward me, but in that exact second, the ground shook as an aura heavy as a mountain flooded the entire place.
Heian's massive, imposing body completely blocked the entrance, while a terrifying, fierce roar tore out of his throat.
His eyes, usually so peaceful, were overflowing with pure rage. Suddenly, dozens of shadows appeared along the courtyard walls.
Chai Chu, Chi and a whole pack of sharp-eyed foxes stalked the intruder, bearing their razor-sharp claws. Up in the sky, hundreds of birds started circling overhead, led by that very same bird.
Its sharp cry was a clear warning. Even the tiny, newly recovered salamander came crawling out of its water tub. It angrily bared its teeth at the invader. The guy and his henchmen stood there, completely frozen in shock. That steady hand of his was now shaking. He stared at the bear over 2 meters tall, roaring right behind my back.
He turned pale instantly. The once peaceful atmosphere of my home was now vibrating with absolute, suffocating tension. A heavy energy of death floated in the air, but I felt zero fear. I stared at the black-robed man and said slowly, "I warned you I would not go. And it looks like my friends do not like you either." The suited thug swallowed hard in pure terror. Seeing hundreds of glowing green and red eyes shining all around him, his legs began shaking completely out of control. "Dr. Lu, cannot we talk this over calmly?" he asked. I smiled at that incredible rush of sheer power. "Oh, now you want to talk," I said, looking at all my protectors standing firm in front of me. I felt completely safe. I locked my eyes onto the man in the black robe without saying another single word.
The terrified look on that guy's face as he retreated is something I will honestly never forget as long as I live.
He pushed up his gold glasses and gave me one last creepy smile that chilled me to the bone. "Get ready," he muttered.
"Sooner or later you will come looking for me," he threatened before vanishing into the thick forest with his 2 half-dead lackeys.
Watching him leave, a bad feeling hit my chest, and trust me, you and I know this is far from over. Just then, my grandmother walked over, munching on a sweet potato, and gently patted my shoulder. Get ready, because today we're about to find out how this crazy Taoist master Qing Shu ruins our main character's peace. He is never up to any good. I forced a smile and told her, "Grandmother, you are taking this way too easily."
After that massive storm, my tiny backyard suddenly became super famous.
I thought sending that big shot away would finally bring some peace, but I never imagined this was just the beginning. The next morning, Wang Da's wife returned, but this time she was not here to settle any debts. She was cradling a round object in her arms and looked incredibly worried while wiping her tears. "Divine Doctor, please save my injured neighbor." When I looked down, I was speechless. It was a rolled-up hedgehog. Its body was full of sharp quills, but now it was covered in colorful plastic bags and broken glass shards. Did this poor thing literally go roll around in a public dump? Sobbingly, the woman explained that the curious creature got inside a tourist's chip bag and could not escape. As it rolled around, all that trash pierced its skin, and now the wounds are getting infected. I sighed in resignation and grabbed my medical kit. With my experience from Bai Yan's surgery, cleaning this was a piece of cake. So easy. Though I still shivered now and then, remembering the intense gaze of Taoist master Qing Shu. But once I circulated my spiritual energy, my mind would calm down completely. Now, pay attention here. This is where his fame in the forest absolutely exploded. My home officially became a clinic for mystical beasts. Today, we got a black bear with a limping leg. He brought giant ginseng to pay for his cast. Tomorrow, a heartbroken owl who does not want to live anymore shows up. He kept slamming his head against trees, so his partner brought him in. But the next day was even worse. A snake spirit with centuries of cultivation got too greedy and swallowed a dead pig whole. Turns out the pig's stomach was full of rocks, and the snake almost choked to death with its eyes bulging. Every morning, the moment I opened my eyes, a massive line was already waiting outside my house. Flying bugs, land beasts, and creatures that burrowed underground. The variety of patients was hard to believe. It looked like a nature documentary. At first, my grandmother was terrified, but she eventually got used to it. She even built small sheds in the yard to act as waiting rooms, saying, "Chuan, my boy, your career has taken a glorious second wind." I know what you are thinking, from saving city lives to treating immortal beasts in the countryside. My grandmother said this while feeding millet to a magpie with a broken wing. Sighing with emotion, my face twitched while I grumbled in silence. A star surgeon with a bright future was now giving enemas to snake spirits. This transition made me want to get a veterinary license. Just when I thought my life would continue in this constant chaos, Bai Yan and Qi Zui showed up again. But this time, they were not in their animal forms. When they opened the courtyard door, I was completely shocked. The man leading them wore a white robe, with his hair tied back elegantly at the nape of his neck. His face was handsomer than any television star's, made even more striking by his piercing golden eyes. They were cold but oozed charisma. It was Bai Yan. Behind him stood an imposing figure dressed in fiery red. He had massive eyes and an incredibly muscular body. You could easily tell he could knock out a bull with one punch. That was Qi Zui. I froze right where I stood, holding the enema tube for the snake spirit. They transformed into humans. Qi Zui burst out laughing, saying it was much easier to talk this way. "We look more normal like this." Bai Yan greeted me politely, his sheer elegance showing he was no ordinary mortal. "How have you been, Divine Doctor?" I dropped the tube, wiped my sweat, and replied, "Just call me Lu Xuan." So, which mystical beast got hurt today? Did they overeat, or did someone smash their head against a tree again? His face turned grim, and the noisy courtyard went dead silent. The little animals were too terrified to make a sound. "It is nothing like that, Lu Xuan. The mountain god has vanished." I froze. Does a god really exist here? Qi Zui took a step closer, and in a voice as deep as rolling thunder, he said, "He did not just vanish." The mountain's mystical ley line is about to completely break. He pointed behind him, and my eyes followed his gaze. That once lush green mountain was now entirely covered by a strange and ominous grey fog. And trust me, this is the ultimate warning sign. You and I are about to see things get incredibly intense. Let's dive into this chaos where deadly energy explodes and Bai Yan frowns in worry. Monsters are losing their minds as the ley line dries up, and it is only getting worse.
If that ley line snaps, every living thing here, including the village, will be completely swallowed by death.
My heart stopped. I immediately pictured King Shu's wicked smile. It had to be that black-robed bastard, right? I asked him. Bai Yan nodded, confirming he has lusted after the mountain god's power for ages.
Chi Ju looked at me, worried. We searched everywhere, but only your spiritual power can purify this rot.
Divine Doctor, we must rescue the mountain god and save the very pillar of this entire mountain.
I went quiet. Honestly, I was terrified. After all, I'd just handle a scalpel.
And now I have to save an entire ecosystem? Talk about going from basic surgery straight to disaster rescue.
All I wanted was a quiet village life, treating and feeding these adorable, furry little forest animals.
But then, the moment I looked out into the yard, every single little animal was staring at me with complete trust. The healed magpie, the limping bear, and Huangda's kids all crowded around my legs.
If that ley line truly broke, they would all end up dead.
Now pay attention, because these sweet creatures saved me after my dark past and got me back to operating. They made me feel human again. The forest healed my broken heart, so I have to save theirs. Fine, stop looking at me with those puppy eyes. Sighed, heading inside to pack my gear. I went inside and quickly prepped my medical kit, packing antiseptic alcohol infused with my spiritual energy. It was a powerful purifying potion I spent the last few days brewing. Carefully, I pulled out the spirit fur Bai Yan gave me, pinned the silver needle to my collar, and tucked the chi herb safely into my shirt. A sudden warmth wrapped around my heart. Honestly, to hell with that creepy Taoist master.
My scalpel saves lives, but it can also inflict absolute agony. I slung the kit over my shoulder.
Stepping outside, I saw Bai Yan and Shijua waiting for me. "Let's go," I said, taking a deep breath. My voice sounded surprisingly steady. "Let us go rescue that mountain god." Bai Yan looked my way. Pure gratitude flashed in his golden eyes. "Your willingness to join us is already our greatest hope." "I just hope this god is not too heavy, because I cannot carry him," I joked, making someone chuckle. Chi Ju effortlessly grabbed a massive rake from the ground. "That is exactly why I am here," he smirked. "Watch Grandma waving at the door, calling out for me to come home early for dinner. She was making pork rib soup tonight." I waved back, following the crimson and white figures. We marched toward the fog-drenched mountain. The trail to that ruined temple was far worse than I expected. The path was completely lost in the ancient forest, swallowed by weeds taller than a grown man. With nowhere safe to step, I gripped my medical kit, using a thick branch to probe ahead. Terrified of stepping on something horrific, the darkness only grew heavier the deeper we walked. Storm clouds gathered overhead, and a freezing, damp wind began cutting straight to my bones. I couldn't help shivering as twisted trees loomed overhead, their gnarled branches clawing at us. They resembled demons reaching out in the shadows, and frankly, that was close to the truth. Dead rabbits and pheasants littered our path, completely wrapped in a sinister, swirling black mist. Their rotten, blackened flesh was being eaten away by pure death energy. My stomach turned. The rot was spreading faster than we feared. After 2 agonizing hours, a ruined temple finally appeared. It was the long-lost temple of the back mountain, with half of its stone walls completely collapsed. The windows had rotted away decades ago, and the god statue was covered in thick cobwebs. Its cracked clay head hung tilted, with half of its face swallowed up by wild weeds. Those hollow eyes looked genuinely demonic under my flashlight. Everything felt eerie in the dead silence. Not even a single insect buzzed. It was dead silent as I cautiously stepped inside. Walking around the shattered statue, I spotted a heavily rusted iron door hidden on the wall. Buried in weeds, I pushed the heavy door. A loud creak shattered the silence. Trust me, you cannot miss what happens next. All right, you and I are jumping into a dark mystery today where a foul, earthy stench almost made me throw up. Behind the door lay a pitch-black secret passage. It was so narrow that barely one person could squeeze inside. I told Bai Yan and Chi Jue to stay up here and keep watch while I went down to look.
Chi Ju scratched his head, worried, and asked if he should go first. I simply gestured for him to stop.
With your size, if you get stuck in there, I will waste all my energy pulling you out. That will just cause more trouble. Be careful, and if anything feels off, head back up immediately. The stone steps below were damp, slippery, and covered in green moss. Stepping on them felt like walking on wet soap. Inside the cave was a massive pool. Sharp stalactites hung from the ceiling, slowly dripping water into the darkness. The pool water was pitch black. It bubbled constantly with dark foam, releasing a thick, disgusting stench into the air. Waves of pure death energy rose from the water, filling the entire cavern. My chest felt incredibly tight, making it hard to breathe. Right in the middle of the pool stood a withered, ancient tree. Its trunk was covered in blood-red talismans. They fluttered in the gloomy wind, looking incredibly creepy. Now, pay attention to this part. 4 massive iron chains were wrapped around that dry tree, tightly binding a prisoner. This person had long white hair reaching all the way to their ankles. Heavy iron chains pierced right through their limbs. Their head was hanging down. I could not see their face clearly, but they did not look like an evil spirit. Instead, they looked like a gentle deity who had suffered some horrific tragedy. Contrasting completely with the dark death energy around them, every rattle of the chains brought a heartbreaking groan of pain. My heart sank. This had to be the mountain god Bayan mentioned. Quietly, I took a few steps closer. I wanted to check how badly they were hurt. As if sensing my presence, they slowly lifted their gaze. Their eyes were incredibly gentle, even though they were completely bloodshot from the excruciating pain. Suddenly, my foot hit something hard. Buried in the thick mud, I found a discarded wooden tablet. I picked it up and wiped away the dirt. Shining my flashlight on it, 2 carved characters appeared. Qing Shu. My eyes went wide and my heart stopped. Of course, it was that absolute fraud of a priest. That vile monk was plotting something massive. I knew it the moment I saw him back in the courtyard. The way he looked at me back then, pure evil. As I stared at the wooden plaque, a chilling, creepy laugh echoed behind me. I thought I would trap those 2 foxes. I did not expect a mere doctor to stumble into my trap first. I whipped my head around. I know what you are thinking, and yes, my flashlight almost slipped as a robed figure stepped from the shadows. It was the same man from my grandmother's house, pretending to be some holy immortal, Master Qingshu. Only now his kind mask was gone, revealing a face twisted with pure greed and malice under the light. His wicked laughter made my skin crawl. Desperate, I tightly gripped the handle of my medical bag. My stomach dropped. What did you do to the mountain god? Master Qingshu just narrowed his eyes maliciously. He stared at the chained figure in the pool with eyes full of a wild, fanatical madness. I am simply helping him find peace. This mountain's spirit vein holds the life force of every living creature. He has hoarded it for far too long. It is finally time for me to take my turn. You are just a shameless thief hiding behind pretty words. Have you no honor? He scoffed. What do you know, girl? He laughed as if it were a joke, screaming in a high pitch, I have cultivated for 200 years. I pushed my body to its absolute limits, yet I cannot break through. Why was he born a god, destined for eternal life and worship? He pointed his finger with utter disgust at the chained bod. Shaking with fury and pure greed, he spat, If the heavens are unjust, I will seize power myself. I sacrificed 100 years of power to activate this soul-devouring array, drawing death energy from the underworld to slowly drain his life force. Once he is completely empty, I will gain an immortal body. From now on, this entire mountain belongs to me. Hearing his insane rant, a cold sweat broke across my back. This old monk was completely out of his mind. So, was Brother Bayan's injury also your doing? That white fox? He scoffed. He fell right into my trap. And trust me, things are about to get way worse. Let's dive into how this man survived against all odds, right when we all thought he was completely done for.
Nobody expected a mere mortal to actually heal him. He stared, his eyes looking at me like a priceless treasure.
He even licked his dry, chapped lips, confessing he wanted to take me away, slice me open and see what was inside.
Maybe his plan could be fast-tracked by several years. The moment he finished speaking, he just waved his hand in dismissal. A thick, dark mist erupted from his sleeve, quickly transforming in midair into a barrage of razor-sharp arrows. They were aimed straight at my heart. Terror gripped me so hard I almost fainted, my mind screaming for help.
They were going to turn me into a human pincushion. In pure panic, without thinking, I grabbed the fur around my neck.
It was the protective talisman made from Bayan's life fur. I focused all my mind. The fur seemed to sense my absolute desperation. A silver light flared, transforming it back into a long, slender needle. "Save me!" I screamed, squeezing my eyes shut as I threw the silver needle. Suddenly, a blinding flash appeared. The needle expanded instantly in midair, forming a translucent shield that stood firm and strong right in front of me. The dark arrows slammed into the shield, creating an agonizing, high-pitched metallic screech. Ultimately, they dissolved into black smoke and vanished. The face of Taoist Master Qing Shu darkened with rage. He scoffed, calling it a cheap trick from that old fox, and sneering that it wouldn't save me again. Now watch closely, because my fear suddenly vanished, and my medical instincts completely took over. I stared at the massive magical formation behind him, noting the pool and the tree constantly spewing out black smoke. I also locked my eyes on the heavy iron chains radiating that exact same dark energy. Though I knew nothing about magic arrays, the chaotic energy felt like a poorly stitched wound. That was the weak spot. I tightly gripped the scalpel from my medical kit. My heart was pounding wildly, but my hand remained dead steady. "Do you think a mere trace of power will save you?" Xing Shu sneered, instantly cranking up the pressure. Bayan's silver shield began to crack violently. Panic set in as I realized it was about to shatter. This won't hold. What do I do now? I couldn't just sit there and wait for my own death. My eyes swept across the cave, stopping right in the center of the pool at that ancient dried-up tree. Even though I knew nothing of metaphysics, my doctor's brain took over. I realized immediately that the dried tree was the source of the infection, the eye of the array. And then a crazy idea hit me. Watch this. Grabbing my scalpel and Bayan's silver needle, I didn't take a single step back when the shield finally broke. Instead, I ducked and charged. Qing Shu never expected a defenseless human to launch a head-on attack like this. He froze in pure shock. In that split second, I had already sprinted all the way to the pool's edge. I leaped onto the dead tree, the freezing chill of the exposed roots penetrating right to my bones. I shivered violently. The pool's death energy swarmed me like flies to blood, attacking with absolute fury. It felt like my blood was about to freeze solid.
Luckily, the Qi Yan herb in my shirt radiated a warmth that chased away the chill, restoring my numb limbs.
I didn't dare stop. Dragging my half-frozen body, I climbed the trunk to reach the chained and suffering man. Up close, I realized the things piercing his flesh weren't ordinary iron chains at all. They were covered in squirming dark runes, looking like some kind of parasite. They endlessly drained his golden divine power, channeling it through the tree and deep into the earth. This was the main source of the bleed. "How dare you?" Qing Shu roared furiously behind me, finally reacting. Dark energy formed sharp blades, flying straight at my back. There was absolutely no time to dodge. I could only grit my teeth and plunge my scalpel deep into where the chain met the tree. My body's pure spiritual energy surged into the scalpel's tip, just as the dark blades pierced my shoulder and back. The blinding pain made my vision go completely dark. A metallic taste welled up in my throat, but I held on, flashing back to that agonizing past surgery. Medical monitor alarms echoed in my ears. I failed to save that patient back then, but I refuse to fail today. Screaming, I grabbed the needle to change our tragic fate, and we're about to see how. Stick with me to see how he uses this as a conduit, stabbing the chain like a transfusion needle. A sharp crack echoed through the cave. The moment the chain shattered, a blinding golden light exploded outward. It instantly flooded the gloomy cave with light. As the dark energy touched it, it vanished with a hiss. Ah, my path to immortality. Qing Shu screamed in agony. Trapped in the light, his body smoked with black vapors as he realized all was lost. Gritting his teeth, he abandoned his quest for immortality, his entire body blurred into motion. He fled down a secret tunnel and vanished. The danger was finally gone, and my built-up tension snapped. Exhaustion washed over me. My legs gave out, my hand slipped off the trunk, and I plummeted downward. But the cold water and jagged rocks never came. Instead, I fell into a warm, firm embrace. Now, pay attention to this. As I opened my eyes, I met a breathtaking face with a gentle, divine gaze. It was the mountain god I had saved. He held me close as warm energy flowed, rapidly healing my wounds. Thank you, my little divine doctor. He smiled, his voice sounding like a soft caress. I am the mountain god. My name is... I smiled inside. I wanted to look cool and tell him to send a thank you plaque. But my eyelids grew far too heavy. Everything faded to black, and I passed out completely. When I finally opened my eyes again, I was lying in my own familiar wooden bed. The late afternoon sun beamed through the cracks of the window, warming my legs. My grandmother was sitting right there, wiping my face with a damp towel. Seeing me blink, she asked if I was awake. She sighed in relief, calling me a stubborn boy. I was out cold for 3 days and 3 nights. I tried to sit up, but my body throbbed with pain, and I had absolutely zero strength left. Do not move. Stay down. Grandma gently pushed my shoulders. That young man with Cheju said you suffered spiritual exhaustion. The young man with Cheju? My exhausted brain still could not process anything. Ah, the one in the long white robe. He is incredibly handsome. He looks like a highly educated scholar and knows a lot about medicine, she added with a knowing look. She was talking about Ba Yan, the white fox I saved. Even though he is still injured, he brought spiritual herbs and mushrooms, calling me the savior of his clan. He insisted on giving you everything. I secretly figured Ba Yan was not just doing this out of pure gratitude. He was probably terrified that if I died, nobody would be left to treat the mountain animals. I just stared at the ceiling beams. I know what you are thinking. It sounds totally crazy, but the ache in my back proved it was all real. Lu Chuan, an unlucky guy about to lose his medical license, actually chased off a rogue Taoist and saved a god. If I put this in my annual work report, the director would lock me in a psych ward for telling the truth. But suddenly, Grandma remembered something. She leaned in close. A few days ago, that abandoned mountain temple suddenly started glowing with a beautiful golden light. Everyone in the village is saying that the mountain god has finally returned. Now, that temple is packed with worshippers and incense. Some even come to our doorstep to bow in gratitude. I just smiled, gave a vague reply, and spent a whole week in bed drinking countless cups of bitter medicine. Only then could I finally stand and walk around. During those days, my small yard felt like a community centre. Huang Da visited every single day, bringing a jar of honey to replenish my depleted energy and blood flow. Ti Jua brought over glowing, colourful stones from the dark, swearing they would do wonders to improve my complexion. He told me to put them under my pillow, but sleeping on a pile of rocks would just break my neck. A fox's idea of beauty is definitely different from ours, but the funniest gift came from the snake spirit. With extreme shyness, she handed me a nearly transparent snake skin. Dr. Liu, this is the skin I just shed. You can make an undershirt out of it. It will protect you from any blade and keep you cool. I just stared at the cold, slimy skin. My mouth twitched in disbelief. I knew I would absolutely never wear something so incredibly bizarre in my life. I accepted the strange gifts with resignation, and that's where we leave our lively forest courtyard life. Let's dive into this cozy sanctuary where the yard is packed with herbs, wild foxes, and golden weasels running totally free. I was relaxing in my rocking chair, soaking up the sun and hugging Chiyan grass for warmth, when an unexpected call came. It was my chatty doctor friend from the hospital, screaming with pure excitement, "Schwan, you are famous! Your case is solved. You are not responsible. Did you know?" His screaming almost shattered my eardrum, making me drop my phone. I narrowed my eyes and replied, "What is all the fuss about? I am busy hanging out with my little forest spirits."
Forget about spirits. This is about your surgical accident. You have been fully cleared. His voice was shaking with pure joy.
Now check this out. The patient's family was actually trying to pull off a shameless insurance fraud scheme. They gave him banned foreign drugs before surgery, and the medical examiner finally did a thorough reevaluation. He died of cardiac arrest caused by drug interactions, having absolutely nothing to do with your excellent surgery. Now everyone who trashed you on social media is apologising, and the hospital website is flooded with regretful messages. The director bugs me daily asking when you will return, and he even promised you a massive welcome back bonus. I knew exactly what they were feeling. Justice was finally served. I was not a killer, and the truth was out. I did not kill anyone, and that awful nightmare crushing my soul had finally vanished without leaving a single trace. I sighed deeply, watching the chaotic fun in my yard as Chi Kuo competed in a strength match against wild boars. He won and roared victoriously, while an injured magpie I healed sang happily and out of tune from the old tree. There was no smell of disinfectant here, only the clean, earthy aroma of wild grass and nature. Suddenly, I realised that high-stress hospital filled with cameras and constant drama was officially a thing of the past. All of that felt incredibly far away now. I picked up my phone and simply texted back, "I am not coming back. I have found something far more valuable here." The other end of the line went completely silent. Eventually, he just replied with an "okay" and a giant thumbs up. I put away my phone and stretched. Trust me, this is where my beautiful new life begins, just as a soft gasp echoes from the entrance. I looked up and burst out laughing. It was a sweet, chubby little panda bear. He was whimpering, holding his bloated stomach, and looked at me with teary eyes, pointing to his big balloon-like belly. He had clearly overeaten out of pure greed. I brushed off my hands and grabbed my stethoscope nearby. The saved forest deity transformed into a gentle breeze. It danced all over the garden, bringing a refreshing breeze. I smiled at the chubby panda and said, "All right, let us start by massaging your belly to help that digestion." Next patient.